My name is Craig. I'm a marijuana addict. And my home group is in District 7 in Los Angeles, California. And my home meeting is the Higher Ground meeting in Culver City. And my sobriety date is September 23rd, 1996. So as Rich kind of alluded to, it's like I'm not supposed to be the speaker tonight. Jonathan C. was supposed to be our speaker, and he can't be here because his mother is gravely ill. And I want to just start with kind of giving some appreciation to Jonathan and his family. In our small community in Los Angeles, Jonathan, his mom, his wife Patricia, and his brother Gary are kind of like the first family of Marijuana Anonymous. And they have given so much of their time, love, and effort to building the community, helping countless numbers of people. And through my story, I'm going to talk about Jonathan because he's become a dear friend over the years. So I just would love to give them just a round of applause and thank them for their years of service to our fellowship. So we've heard a lot of great speakers this weekend. My story's not that exciting, I gotta tell you, right off the bat. There's not gonna be any, jails, institutions, or death. Maybe a little death, but no jails or institutions. I grew up in New York City. I grew up in the Bronx in the 60s and 70s. And, New York was a dirty and dangerous place. But I was really insulated because I grew up in a neighborhood where, the average age was about 70 years old. And there was just a handful of kids. We all knew each other. And, we were just like insulated from a lot of what was going on around us. I grew up in a, your garden variety, dysfunctional family. Nothing special. There were no drug addicts, there were no alcoholics. It was my two parents, my brother, and my grandmother. And, we had a strong Jewish identity in the family with a healthy dose of fear and paranoia. And, my mother and my grandmother would, always remind us that they were coming to get the Jews. Never identified who they were, but we knew they were coming. And, that was just really, I think, why maybe my brother gravitated toward religion and I gravitated toward drugs and alcohol. I was a regular user from almost day one. First time I used pot, I bought a loose joint from Carl Jones in the bathroom of my junior high school. And me and Richie Silverman walked home we cut school opening day at Yankee Stadium, and we walked down the Grand Concourse and we smoked that joint. And I think the feeling of, being, it's just this feeling of being an adult, being somebody, feeling empowered by doing that. I didn't get high, but it really felt good. A couple of weeks later, a couple of guys from the neighborhood went to Van Cortlandt Park and, went up into the stadium where the track was, and it all came together. And, this is something I wanted to do every day, all day, for the rest of my life, right there and then. It was, a lot of it was having older kids that I was hanging out with when I was young. We used to hang out at a local park, a lot of music. The older kids got me into the Grateful Dead. Ruined my life. And in going to high school, it's like I hung out with like the Burnouts, the musicians, and I also worked at my school newspaper. So, I just remember early on, one of the first times when using pot was causing me to like kind of lose my reality, was I used to work at the A&P supermarket after school, got really high, went to work, walked in, all the people that I worked with, all the kids, they were standing there, and I'm, pretty high, so I've got to play it off, and I'm like, hey, let's get to work, let's get to work. And they're like, be quiet, be quiet. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Let's get to work. And then, my friend like grabs me by the collar and goes, the place burnt down last night. And I look up, and there's no roof on this supermarket. I had no idea, but, hey, I'm just a kid, right? And then, we in my high school, we went and we checked out some colleges in upstate New York, and they made us sign a release saying that we weren't going to do drugs, we weren't going to screw around, and naturally we all did drugs and screwed around, and I didn't get busted, but a couple of my peers did, and they literally wrote letters to the colleges they got accepted to, and a couple of them got their acceptances yanked. So, I was really lucky. And, my leaving high school as a full-blown pothead at that point, we promoted a concert in the auditorium. And understand, like, this is a big city high school. It had 5,000 students, 2 AstroTurf fields, and a 1,500-seat auditorium. And they let us put on a concert there. No police, no security. They just opened the doors on a Saturday night. And I've never had more fun in my life, I don't think. But, this was being young, being at risk, being a drug addict, in training. And it was kind of the shape of things to come. So, I get to college, and finally I'm free. I finally, get out of the city, and I go upstate, and parents drop me off, and I'm tripled in my first room in college. And they leave, the door closes, and what do? I light a joint. I smoke a joint, and I'm, it's just the greatest feeling. And then my 2 new roommates come in. Little did I know, these kids were from Staten Island. They went to high school together, Tom and Joe, and Joe's dad dropped them off. So I'm high as fuck. And, Joe's dad walks over and he goes, how you doing? What's your name? I said, my name's Craig. And he's like, so sir, what do you do for a living? He goes, I'm an NYPD detective. We move on. So, in high school, I wanted to be a journalist. That's what I wanted to do with my life. But, it looked like the folks in the radio station were having a lot more fun. And they were literally smoking pot. And Dan loves this story. It's like I walk in, and, I sit down, and this one guy's name was Peter Shapiro, said, great, this is what you got to do to join us, and blah, 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 blah. And then he throws a bag of weed at me, and he says, roll a joint, roll the biggest joint you can. So it's like I roll a joint, and I said, like, how can you do this, like smoking weed? And he turns around with me with all the conviction in the world and says, kid, if they've never seen you straight, they don't know what you're like stoned. And like, those are words to live by for a pothead, right? It's great. So like, I made a lot of friends. A lot of these people are like, they're lifelong friends. They all smoked weed. But, this is like the first time in my life where like I really started to feel the ramifications, the emotional ramifications, the social ramifications, and also, I fell below, I was having so much fun, like I fell below my course load. And like they were telling me, it's like, if you don't get a full load, it's like you can't be here anymore. So I found myself like, having to get my shit together. And it was all because of having fun smoking weed all the time, not going to class, not, dropping classes, but because like, this is clearly getting in the way of my drug use. And I also started to have a lot of problems communicating with people. And I had a lot of problems, relationships with the opposite sex. It's like, Melody was talking today in her workshop about looking people in the eye. It's like I couldn't look a woman in the eye until my 30s. I just couldn't do it because my priority was getting high and going to see music, and that was my priority. And I could see that I had to make a choice, right? And the choice was clear. It's like the choice was getting high and doing drugs. And things got really insular for me. I had my community of friends. I, at that point, rose to be the general manager of this school radio station. And we had a really steady supply in the early 80s of really good pot. And thank I hate to say this, but thanks to the Soviet-Afghan war, we had a really great supply of black Afghani hash in the early 80s. And yeah, like I couldn't get out of the house without getting high. It got to that point. And I'm 18, 19 years old at this point. So I graduated college in 1986 and took a camping trip across the country thinking like, this is it. Like I've got to, this is it. I've got to get my act together. And the choice was really like to get a graduate degree and find a job, or find a job that would support my lifestyle. What do you think I chose? So I get this job at this radio network, and what basically my job was writing nationally syndicated radio shows. And they were mostly classic rock shows, and also doing live broadcasts and doing live broadcasts from events. And I had to literally dig up dead rock stars. They weren't dead. They were this is the death part. No, but I had to dig up like these rock stars like from who had really weren't even touring anymore, and do interviews with them for these radio programs. So it was very exciting. It was very exciting. And then the company I worked with got the contract for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And this is the year that Jimi Hendrix Experience is inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I got the chance to interview Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell, right? Which is, for somebody who loves music, it was just phenomenal. So I'm sitting there at a suite in a hotel in Manhattan with Noel Redding, and I'm so psyched. I get really high before this interview. And I get there and I set up, much like this, tape, kind of hit pause, just make sure the levels are right, and you go into the interview. 40 minutes into the interview, I look over at my tape machine. Now, this is all on cassette, and I look over, I never hit play. And I mean, gracious as this guy was, he's like, I said, I told him, and he goes, well, this doesn't do anything for me. And he leaves the room, comes back with a Heineken, and says, let's go. And he basically does the exact same, word for word, he says everything again, So, I mean, the point of this is not, to glorify my drug use. It's to say it's like, I'm doing the same thing. I'm making the same mistakes. I'm having problems communicating. I'm having problems, even in this great job that I have, I can't function. I can't have a relationship. And I'm choosing this, marijuana over all things, sacrificing everything to live this lifestyle. So, everything outside was great, but, the marijuana was clearly starting to take its toll. And I started to have like debilitating anxiety. I started to see this therapist, right? And this guy was a lovely guy, but he was one of those therapists who would literally sit with you for 45 minutes and not say a word unless you started talking first. And you'd sit there for half an hour and he'd be like, so what are you thinking? I'm like, I don't know, what the fuck are you thinking? It's like, so this is going on for like a year. Now this guy knew exactly how much weed I was smoking. And the solution was give him Prozac and give him lorazepam. So, medicate the medicated, right? That was the solution. So this goes on, and as a good drug addict, it's like I learned to live with my addiction, right? You sort of, adapt, right? I wasn't going to change anything. But I think everything really started to escalate, like the emotional problems. And the emotional problems, the anxiety, the difficulty of being a drug addict really escalated when I met this woman, Nancy, in the elevator of the office building I worked in. She worked upstairs at a publishing company, and we started seeing each other, and it got really serious to the point where we got engaged and we lived together. And then I got a job at MTV, and I never wanted to make MTV. I wanted to make television, but it definitely wasn't my scene. There are a lot of great MTV stories. I'm not going to tell them here, but if you guys want to know, this was MTV in the mid to late '80s, and the woman this woman Nancy, she grew up in Los Angeles in Studio City. And I'm working in television at that point, and she's sick of the winters in New York, and she wants to move back. And I'm thinking, you know what? If I'm working in television, Los Angeles might be a good place to do that, right? It wasn't stoned enough that I couldn't put that together. But so we decided we're moving back. We're moving to Los Angeles. For me, it was a geographic. It was nothing less than geographic. I had just basically. I needed to leave. I had a group of friends which the relationships were strained because all of us were doing drugs, and I just really needed to leave. I was pretty insane by then, and she wanted to marry me, and I needed somebody to carry my baggage, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. So I'm in Los Angeles, and immediately I hook up with some friends that I had, and within, hours, I've got a connection for weed. I certainly did not move to California to get sober. That was not part of the plan. And I did some odd jobs, to get by, and was looking for work. But I knew, if I wanted my marriage to last, if I wanted to leave the life that was unsustainable behind, I really needed to make some changes. I needed to get out of television, and there she had a family friend who was a deadhead, who I had met in New York, who was an executive at a commercial real estate company, who convinced me to leave the entertainment business and come work with him. We're going to have fun. We're going to do a lot of drugs. We're going to see a lot of shows. We're going to make a lot of money. It was like, cool, I'm in. Let's do it. And flash forward, not to mention any names, he's sober 15 years now. And we're still really good friends. But his life kind of went off the rails. And, I started working at this company with him. And I started to see another therapist, right? Now I knew, inside, everything on the outside was going fine. It's this is the typical story that you hear. Everything on the outside is looking fine. Inside, it's I'm just you ever look at a under a microscope and you see these cells just running around, and that's what's going on in my head, right? But I started to see this therapist because I thought my problem was I'm changing careers. This is my problem. This is my real problem. And, she started to address the weed. So 2 years into this marriage, my wife sits me down on the day of our 2-year anniversary, and she says to me, point blank, I don't want to be married to a drug addict. I don't want to have children with a drug addict, and I'm leaving. And she literally left the next week. She just walked out on me the next week. And, you know, here I am in a strange town. I'm a drug addict, thank you. You know, I'm in a strange town. I really have no connection. I can't go back there, and I don't know if I want to stay here in Los Angeles. So I went back to that therapist. She was a really wonderful woman. Her name was Jackie Smith. And, you know, she says to me, she goes, I'm really happy, you know, you're willing to get honest right now, but, you know, point blank, I can't help you. In fact, nobody can help you unless you stop smoking pot. That's the first time anybody that, well, let me put it to you this way. It's the first time I actually heard it. People have said it, and I was listening to it, but that was the first time I actually heard somebody tell me I need to stop smoking pot. And then she reaches like into her pocket, and she said, this was given to me by one of my colleagues. I know nothing about this. And it was the 1-800 number to Marijuana Anonymous. And thank you. And, you know, my first reaction was, you got to be kidding me. There's a Marijuana Anonymous? But, you know, so I took the number, and, you know, it was a Friday afternoon. And we had, you know, 2 conference rooms, and I went into the small conference room in my office, and I dialed the 1-800 number. And there was a painfully long message of like every single, you know, and I'm in District 6. I'm living in District 6. It's a painfully long message of like every single meeting in District 6. And at the very end, it says, if you're a woman, call Terry. If you're a man, call Randy. So this is the obligatory part of my share where I tell you how Randy Friedman saved my life. And those of you from District 6 know who Randy Friedman is. He is a, you know, prolific member of our fellowship. He may not me, but he's prolific to me. You know, that's what's really important because I'm standing up here right now. So Randy Friedman picks up the phone. He picks up the phone. And I said, hey, you know, somebody gave me this number, and I listened to the message, and I'm calling you. So what's this all about? And he goes, well, I really can't tell you what it's all about, but I can tell you what happened to me. And Randy Friedman proceeds to tell me my story. He just proceeds to tell me my story. And, you know, he said, will you meet me at a meeting on Monday night? There's a Monday night newcomers MA meeting at the corner of Victory Boulevard and Laurel Canyon Boulevard. And I said, I'll meet you. He goes, are you going to use this weekend? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to probably use him like in like 10 minutes. It's like, you know, it's almost 5 o'clock. It's like, of course I'm going to use. And he's like, all right, just meet me at this meeting. Just meet me at this meeting. So, you know, I go to the meeting. I go to the meeting on Monday. And, you know, I asked somebody, hey, is Randy here? And he goes, Randy's right over there. So I walk over and, like, you know, very businesslike, want to shake this guy's hand. And he goes, we hug here. Randy is a big guy. Randy's a big guy. And, like, I'm thinking, like, can anything, like, be more fucked up? It's like, you know, my wife walked out on me. I hate my job. I don't know anybody in this town. You know, like, I'm at this meeting. Like, now I'm a drug addict. And, you know, this fucking guy wants to hug me. Right? So he hugs me, and I'm like, fine. And then he goes into his pocket, and he hands me his business card. Randy Friedman, sober human. And his phone number, right? There are no email addresses at this point. I will tell you that. There are no email addresses. So I sit down to this meeting, and it's like, you know how they say it's like you're in the right place? It's like, it's fucked up. I'm in the right place. It's not good. This is really not good. I'm in the right place. And, look, so this is June of 1996. My birthday is in September of 96. You do the math, right? I had this revelation, and like it just came to me. I'm very proud of it. I realized that if you wanted to stop smoking pot, you had to stop smoking pot. It only took me 4 months to get there. And, the last time I smoked pot, I was at a friend's house in Bernal Heights in San Francisco. And I smoked a bowl and went to the airport. And, it was September 23rd of 1996. And I didn't jump right in. I would admit I didn't jump right in. It took me a while to come to terms with the fact that I was truly a marijuana addict. And my life was unmanageable. The evidence was right in front of me, but, I was definitely hesitant and, very resistant to it. But I got there. I got there. And then, I had this watershed moment where this newcomers meeting in North Hollywood, and there are a bunch of people who are, alum from that meeting sitting in this room tonight. It was such a great meeting. I mean, there were, for our fellowship, there were, people who are, in the pantheon of LA Marijuana Anonymous, who were graduates of this program, of this meeting. And, I'm sitting there and like, I was sober, but I didn't understand what was really going on. I didn't understand like what this program was all about. So I looked for the most serious guy in the room. His name is Mike H. And, you guys are laughing. He's a serious guy. So I took him to Starbucks. And, I said, Mike, I got to be honest with you. Like, I'm sitting in these meetings. I'm not smoking pot anymore. But it's like these people are speaking English. I don't understand a fucking word they're saying. I really don't. And he's like, okay, all right. It's really simple. The meetings are fellowship, right? The steps, that's the program. And this is a cup of coffee. And it's that simple. And, that night he became my sponsor. And he was a taskmaster. He really was. It was look, I'll follow direction. I will follow directions. Somebody tells me to do something, I'll do it. But he was a taskmaster. In fact, I still use all of the materials with my sponsees that he gave me 26 years ago. I still use that stuff because, I never would ask a sponsee, to do anything that I wasn't asked to do. So that's what he asked me to do, and that's what I did it. And, then I started to get involved. And again, it's like I was resistant. Remember that long voicemail message? If you're a woman, call Terry. So Terry was the secretary of that Monday night meeting. And, she said, you're going to do coffee. And I'm like, it's a commitment, right? Now I got to be there, right? And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, well, why not? He goes, you know how to make coffee? I'm like, yeah, I know how to make coffee. He goes, well, why don't you want to do it? He goes, I don't know. He goes, you can be here every Monday? I'm like, absolutely, I'm going to be here every Monday. He goes, well, do the fucking coffee. I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. And, that was my first commitment, was the coffee commitment. And, once I got involved, I felt more a part of the program. I mean, it's every cliche is true. I hate to say it, but every cliche is true. Once I started to get involved, I felt a lot more part of this program. I had every different commitment at the meeting level. I was, I ended up being secretary, like every single commitment. And I started to do work on the district level. And it didn't always go well for me. It's like, a lot of my character defects, bubbled up, during, district meetings. And, over the years, like I felt like, my time in the program is best served on the meeting level. And, that's kind of where I stayed for the past 26 years. Also, I've had the privilege to be, on the committee for 5 conventions and given, like, I don't know how many times, STEP workshops. And, the STEP workshop that I love to give, 5 minutes? They told me I had an hour. So then we get to the Mesozoic era. The earth is starting to cool. Life is forming. Okay, so the workshop that I love giving was steps 1, 2, and 3. Building a strong foundation. And when we used to have speaker tapes, there's a bunch of speaker tapes out there if you want to, if you like what I'm saying tonight, God bless you, but there are other speaker tapes if you want to hear those. And but the thing that I look at is one of the most important things that I have done in this program is facilitating the District 7 book study. And so that was started by Jonathan and Richie, who moved to New York. But this book study is well over 15 years old. And I just want to take a step back and say that the book study got new life in Zoom. And like, who thought that this app would be like the real hero of our recovery in the pandemic? And I want to point out 2 people, one of which is in the room tonight. Heather, where is she? I saw her somewhere. Heather. And Scott S. Heather and Scott developed the infrastructure for the Zoom meetings. And I don't know, as an addict, I don't know where I would be without the work that Heather did in putting this whole thing together in Zoom. And I know a lot of you got sober in Zoom, and it's really, I admire this fellowship so much. I admire this fellowship so much of the way that we rallied in the pandemic and stayed together so we could be here tonight. And I can't say enough about that. So I did want to wrap things up with with 3 things that have meant the most to me in my recovery. And the first one is certainly fellowship. So, the people who I've met in this program have kept me here. I also owe so much to the men in this program who accepted me and embraced me and kind of took me under their wing and showed me, what it was like to live a sober life. The people that I met in this meeting, in these meetings, have become lifelong friends. Friend Sean is somebody that I met in my very first week in sobriety, and he's remained a friend for 26 years. And, there's a lot more people I could mention, but he's the only one who got his ass here, so, he gets the shout out. And I also want to shout out to Wes because he asked me to give him a shout out, so there you have it. I don't know why. It's like, he's a great guy, don't get me wrong. I feel like I have a deeper relationship with these people, than most people in my lives. And, the level of honesty, that we have with each other is certainly beyond my expectation. And, the answer to anybody's question is yes. Yes, we can have fun in recovery. We can have fun in recovery. We do have fun in recovery, and we will have more fun. The second thing is service. So, I always suggest that people get involved. Involvement got me to feel like I was in the middle of the boat, plain and simple. Service is always a great place to test out the new person that I want to be, everything I'm learning in recovery. We test it out in service, before we unleash it on the rest of the world. But, we show, and it also feels good to give something back that was given so freely to me. And, lastly, sometimes I need to create the environment I need to recover. If you build it, they will come. And sometimes I need to take the initiative to do things. Like, for instance, people have been hesitant to get back into the rooms. I felt like I've got to go rent a room and start the meeting back up. And, it's not that I want to be the secretary of this meeting for the rest of my life. It's just like, we just want to get it started. And then we turn it over to the next person. But sometimes you just have to take the initiative. And then the third thing is working the program. So first and foremost, Marijuana Anonymous is a 12-step recovery program for people addicted to marijuana. Can't forget that. This is the program that we talk about. And I can't forget that I'm a marijuana addict. I can't forget MA gave me a solution to my dilemma. I can't forget I need to work a spiritual program of action to keep my recovery intact. I can't forget that I need to give this thing away to people who want it. I can't forget the 12 steps have a corresponding set of principles and traditions that help guide my thoughts and actions. And I can't forget that I have a higher power in my life that I call God that has been with me for my entire journey in recovery. And I can't forget that without MA, I would not have the life that I live today. So I encourage everybody here tonight to take the enthusiasm that we got from this convention home and spread it gently to your fellows, to your sponsees, and to your meetings, to your fellowship. See what needs to be done and take the initiative to create the recovery community you want to be a part of. That's the service part of it. And I encourage everybody to do the work of the 12 steps with your sponsor and your sponsees. Don't shortchange yourself. The benefits are here for all of us. And the benefits are many. But I have to do the work. And a lot of times that work is sitting alone, quietly in a room with my higher power, with a book, and just, listening to the silence. So I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I thank the convention committee for asking me second to speak tonight. Have a great convention. My name is Craig, and I'm a marijuana addict.